All right, so I have been back in puzzle kind of mode again. I know that was very like OG pandemic, but I've been doing a lot of puzzles lately, and it's been fun because the kids have been wanting to watch to kind of help out a little bit. And so I realized that we all have a different process. So I want to tie this together with how I think about when I look at clients. So think about how you do a puzzle. When I do a puzzle, I sort everything out. I get all the colors facing up. I get all my edges. I set them off to the side. I create kind of the frame first and then start to fill in like more obvious colors and things like that. And what's hysterical is my daughter, she just dives right in and she sees patterns and she kind of pulls them together, and she doesn't do edges at all. It drives her nuts. And then my son, especially if it's like a 1,000-piece puzzle, he's going to wait till I do some of the framework first, and then he'll start to fill in. And I just realized how unique each of us are when we look at problems and we look at trying to how to put things together. And so when I realized that when I am working with a client, I have also developed kind of a framework in how I look at somebody. And it's very similar, quite honestly, to, and maybe that's why I'm doing a lot of puzzles right now. How I do a puzzle is first I want to lay all my pieces out. And I want to, like, I have a general sense of what's going on, but I want to lay everything out and see what's going on. And then I want to kind of establish this framework to work from. That's like the edges of the puzzle and kind of that frame. And that's just how my brain works. And then I will kind of gather different sections that are a little bit easier. And I tend to go, I wasn't always this way either. I tend to go low hanging fruit with, my solutions and the choices. Like, let's go for the easiest win first. Let's, at least start to try and establish some things that are going in the right direction or less symptoms or whatnot. Because I think, quite honestly, that gives us really great buy-in. I mean, if you're going to go work with somebody, and I've seen this happen time and time again, and it's, 6 to 8 weeks you've been working with them and nothing's changed, you're really starting to wonder whether it's you or them. So just really easy wins. And I think that's quite honestly why, I like to create the frame first, like, okay, I got this. I at least have this thing I'm working within. But inevitably you get that puzzle. And this happened to me when I was visiting my parents in Seattle in December, is you get that puzzle where it looks like an edge piece and it isn't. It isn't. It's one of those like fakey pieces to kind of mess you up. Or even worse, and this happened, I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, where you can kind of make puzzle pieces sort of fit in places, but they really shouldn't. It's almost like it's too close. Not a great puzzle to work with. And then you finish up and you've got 2 holes left and you've got 2 pieces left, but they don't match up. And so you messed up something somewhere. Like, that can happen a lot too when you're working with clients. You're like, all right, I think I have this all figured out. And you're like, wait a second. This doesn't make sense. And you're left with 2 pieces and 2 holes and they don't match. And, do you just start from scratch? You throw the whole thing out? Like, what do you do? So I think that's one of the things, especially when you get into complex kind of complaints or symptoms or problems. And this happens all the time on my DMs, quite honestly, is I'll have people like, hey, I went to see somebody and they said this, but this is what I think is going on. That first thing is just kind of lay all those parts and pieces out, figure out what worked, figure out what didn't, like keep it super simple and go for kind of easy, low hanging fruit. I'm not about minutia at all. And it's not because I wasn't trained that way. Like, back in the day, I definitely was trained in minutia. My brain doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. So kind of 2 summary pieces. One, if you're a provider and you are a coach or a trainer or a physical therapist, and you're working with somebody, like, you need to have some sort of kind of framework in how you approach things and kind of a process. And if you're a client, if you're a mom trying to figure these problems out for yourself, understand that if you're not used to looking at it, you can kind of make some things up that don't make sense. Like, I did a Mythbuster Monday about this reel that I saw, that basically the way that it set up the anatomy was like, oh, the adductor, it's right here. And it showed the adductor in isolation, which is an inner thigh muscle. And if it tugs, oh, it brings your pelvis back together. Voila, you're back into your pre-pregnancy genes, which makes total sense, except for the adductor does not work in isolation. So the moral of the story there is, if this is not kind of an area you're used to thinking and functioning in, it's really easy to kind of see these simple solutions that really never had any root in data whatsoever. So the moral of that story is really just get help, get people that are used to kind of putting a framework around things, used to looking for patterns. Like if you were going to go to a puzzle competition, you want to be with somebody that has an idea how they've got to get through, 1,000 or 5,000 piece puzzle. They're not just going to be like, oh, well, that kind of looks great. Or what about this? You want to have somebody that is used to kind of having approach and how they go about doing it. So for all you puzzle people, that's how I do my puzzles. And for all of you that wondered what's going on in here, that's kind of how I think I've evolved in how I look at different client problems or things like that, is go low-hanging fruit, create a structure, kind of go for those obvious pieces, and then see where we are, and then kind of fill in the gaps from there. So if you ever have any questions about processes, kind of how I think about things, and this is kind of, I do it very collaboratively with clients. If you're a client and you have a question about kind of, I went through PT and I'm still not really any better, shoot me a DM. I'm happy to kind of help you start to figure out what the next best steps are. And if you are a postpartum pro, if you're a coach or a trainer, definitely hit me up if you want to know a little bit more about kind of establishing that framework and really that critical thinking or that problem solving processes, because quite honestly, that's been the key to the outcomes that I've gotten with my higher level athletes, and quite honestly, having a super niched kind of practice that I've even doubled down on my niche during the pandemic, and continued to have some really great outcomes and a nice evolving practice. So if you have questions on either of those things, definitely hit me up in the DMs. Otherwise, I'm going to go hit up my puzzle again.